The coffee cup slipped from my trembling hands and shattered on the kitchen floor, dark liquid spilling across the cold ceramic tiles. My heart pounded so fiercely I was certain it would echo through the entire house. Outside the door, my son-in-law Luke Henry's voice still rang cruelly and clearly. "We'll be better off without her around. Everything will be easier, right?" A dry, mocking laugh followed, slicing my soul like a sharp blade. There I stood, Irene Smith, 67 years old, realizing I had become a burden to the one person I had lived and fought for all these decades. My daughter Amanda. The floor seemed to open beneath my feet, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt I had no place left in this world. I stood motionless for long minutes, staring at the shards of the cup at my feet as if they were pieces of my own broken heart. Tears streamed silently down my wrinkled face, each one bearing the weight of a disappointment I never imagined I would feel. During all the months I'd lived in Amanda and Luke's new house, I had noticed the sideways glances, the subtle comments, the poorly disguised impatience, but I always convinced myself it was just my imagination, that my presence was welcome, that I still mattered to someone in this world. How wrong I had been. The sound of Luke's approaching footsteps snapped me out of my trance. Hastily I wiped away my tears, bent down to gather the fragments, and pretended nothing had happened. He entered the kitchen wearing that false smile I knew so well, though it now took on an entirely different meaning. "All right, Mrs. Smith. I heard a noise," he said, feigning concern. "I only broke a cup, dear. Nothing serious," I replied, forcing a smile that hurt more than any cry. He nodded and left, leaving me alone with my pain and wounded dignity. That Saturday morning, as I finished sweeping up the last pieces, I made a decision that would change everything. I would no longer be a burden. I would no longer endure those cruel laughs. It was time to leave. My life had never been easy. Never. Widowed at 45 when Amanda was just 15, I found myself alone in the world with a teenager to raise and absolutely no resources except my own determination. My husband Joseph had died in a workplace accident, leaving behind debts and a life insurance payout that barely covered the funeral. I remember the night I sat in our modest little home's kitchen, bills spread across the table, calculating and recalculating, trying to find a way to achieve the impossible to ensure Amanda could continue her schooling. Those were years of sacrifice few could imagine. I worked Monday through Saturday as a housekeeper, cleaning homes of families who earned in a month what I didn't see in a year. On Sundays I made sweets to sell at the town square, standing from 5 in the morning until dusk under the scorching sun. My hands became calloused, my back ached, my dreams were locked away in a drawer that never opened again. But Amanda went to school. Amanda had clean clothes, food on the table, and books to read. How many nights did I spend sleeplessly sewing for others, my fingers bleeding from the needle's countless pricks, just to pay Amanda's tuition at the private school she attended? How often did I pretend to be content eating only rice and beans so she could have meat on her plate? How many tears did I swallow in silence when she asked why we couldn't travel on vacation like the other families? But it had been worth it, or so I thought. Amanda graduated in business administration, landed a good job, and met Luke Henry at a corporate party. He was everything a mother could wish for her daughter, educated, successful, from a respectable family. When they married 2 years ago, I wept tears of joy. Finally, my daughter would have the life I could never give her. Moving into their house felt natural. Amanda was pregnant, needed help, and I, already retired on a meager pension, saw no problem leaving my little rented apartment to assist with household chores and care for the baby-to-be. At first, everything seemed perfect. Luke treated me politely, Amanda beamed with happiness over the pregnancy, and I felt useful again. But bit by bit things began to change. First there were the looks. Luke started glancing at me as if my presence irritated him. Then came the subtle remarks. "Mrs. Smith, you needn't worry about that. I'll take care of Amanda. Mrs. Smith, why don't you rest a bit? You've done enough today." Phrases that, taken in isolation, seemed kind but together formed a clear pattern. He wanted me invisible. Amanda, busy with work and pregnancy changes, noticed nothing, or chose not to. She smiled whenever Luke made those comments, nodded when he suggested I not work so hard. Slowly I was excluded from household decisions, from preparations for the baby, from my own daughter's life. And now I had confirmation of everything I had feared. I was a burden, a nuisance, someone they wanted to get rid of. That afternoon, while Amanda was at work and Luke out with a friend, I quietly packed my bags. I folded up my few dresses, gathered my few possessions, and wrote a simple letter. Dear Amanda, I have decided to return to my hometown to settle some outstanding matters. Please don't worry about me. Take care of yourself, and keep an eye on my grandson. I love you always. Mom. I boarded the first bus to Clearbrook, the small inland town where I was born and grew up. Years ago, I had inherited a small estate from my Aunt Olivia, a place I never had the courage to visit. Now, not knowing where else to go, that forgotten patch of land became my only refuge. The estate was in disrepair when I arrived. The little farmhouse showed water damage, the garden was overrun with weeds, and the air of abandonment was almost tangible. Yet something about that place felt liberating. For the first time in decades, I was alone with my own thoughts, without worrying whether I was intruding, or if my presence was welcome. In those first days I cried often, tears of ingratitude, of loneliness, of feeling like an old useless object tossed aside. But gradually something inside me began to awaken. Perhaps it was the pure country air, or the freedom from having to measure every word and gesture. I began to feel more alive than I had in years. I started tending the garden, planting flowers and herbs. I discovered a natural talent for gardening, something I never had explored before. Mornings became magical as I watered the plants at sunrise, painting the sky in incredible colors. I rediscovered the joy of cooking just for myself, preparing dishes I loved without worrying what others thought. It was on one of those mornings that an unexpected visitor arrived. Mrs. Bethany, a neighbor I'd known since childhood, appeared at my door carrying a still warm cornbread and a broad smile. Irene Smith, I can't believe you've come home, she said, hugging me tightly, a reminder of what it felt like to truly belong. Bethany became my confidant and best friend. She helped me renovate the house, taught me old gardening techniques, and above all she listened. During our long talks on the porch over coffee and sunset views, I rediscovered who Irene was before I became Amanda's mother. You know, Irene, Bethany said one afternoon, sometimes we have to lose ourselves to find ourselves. You spent so long living for others, you forgot to live for yourself. Her words echoed in me for days. She was right. For decades I had defined my identity only in relation to others, Joseph's wife, Amanda's mother. I never paused to think who Irene Smith was as an individual. Weeks turned into months, and slowly I built a new life. I began selling my sweets and preserves at the town market, and quickly gained loyal customers. People sought me out not just for my products, but for my conversations, my advice, my warm presence. I discovered I had much more to offer the world than just being a mother and grandmother. It was in one of those quiet, rediscovered moments that my phone rang with a call that would change everything. It was the middle of the night on a Wednesday when the cell phone woke me from sleep. Amanda's name flashed on the screen, and a chill ran down my spine. My daughter never called that late. Mom? Her voice trembled with despair. Mom? I need you. Something terrible has happened. I sat up in bed, fully awake. What happened, sweetheart? Are you and the baby okay? I had a car accident, Mom. I'm in the hospital. The baby is fine. But she began to cry. Mom? I've found things out about Luke. Terrible things. And now he wants me to sign papers, says it's for my own good, but I don't trust him. I need you. Only you can help me. My heart raced. What papers, Amanda? What did you find out? She took a shaky breath. He's not who I thought he was, Mom. His company, it's involved in money laundering. And there's more. Much more. I found documents, recordings, proof that he's using my name to hide illicit funds. And now, after the accident, he's pressuring me to sign a power of attorney giving him total control over my assets. The world spun around me, not only because of the revelations about Luke, but because in that moment, the secret I had guarded so long became crucial. I knew who Luke Henry really was. I had known it from the start but never had the courage to tell Amanda. "Mom? Are you there? Please come get me. I can't stay here. I can't trust him. I'm coming, my daughter. I'll be there as soon as I can. But first, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you long ago." I dressed quickly and headed out, but not before retrieving an old safe from my bedroom. Inside was a folder of documents I never thought I would need. Papers revealing Luke Henry's true identity and his connection to a story I knew all too well. As I drove through the dark country roads toward the city, I remembered how I first discovered the truth about my son-in-law. 2 years ago, when Amanda introduced me to her boyfriend, I had a nagging feeling I knew him from somewhere. That face, that voice, it was familiar. I puzzled over it for weeks until the memory struck me like lightning. Luke Henry was the son of Robert Henry Carroll, a businessman who decades earlier had financially ruined dozens of families in my hometown, including my late husband Joseph's family. Robert had vanished with money from a low-income housing consortium, leaving over 50 families without their life savings. Joseph lost every penny we had saved to buy our own home, forcing us to rent all our lives, a burden that contributed to his heart problems and early death. When I recognized Luke as Robert Carroll's son, I discreetly investigated. I learned he had changed his last name to distance himself from his father's scandal, but had remained in contact, and worse, employed his father's methods in his own business dealings. Rumors of tax evasion, money laundering through shell companies, and other irregularities swirled around him. At the time, I faced a dreadful dilemma. Telling Amanda could destroy her happiness, her marriage, her dreams. She was so in love, so radiant. How could I shatter that based on suspicions and old grievances? I chose silence, hoping I was wrong, that Luke might truly be different from his father. But now, hearing my daughter's desperation over the phone, I knew my silence had been a mistake. If I had spoken up sooner, my daughter wouldn't be in this mess. Yet there was still time to do what was right. When I arrived at the hospital, I found Amanda pale and frightened in her room. 7 months pregnant, she had suffered bruises and a broken arm in the accident, but nothing life-threatening. Luke was nowhere to be seen, giving me the chance to speak calmly with her. "Mom, thank you for coming," she said, hugging me tightly. "I'm sorry for everything, letting you leave without explanation, not noticing how he treated you. I was a terrible daughter." I cupped her face in my hands. "You weren't a terrible daughter, sweetheart. You lived your life. But now we need to talk about Luke and the things I should have told you long ago." I told her everything about Robert Carroll, the fraudulent consortium, how Luke's family had destroyed ours. I showed her the documents I'd kept, the evidence I'd gathered over the years. Amanda listened in stunned silence, tears in her eyes as she took in the enormity of the situation. "Why didn't you tell me, Mom?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Because you were happy, my daughter, and because I hoped I was wrong, that love could change him. But some apples don't fall far from the tree." Just then the door opened and Luke walked in, carrying a bouquet and his usual false smile. His expression changed when he saw me. "Mrs. Smith, what are you doing here?" he asked, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm here for my daughter, as I always have been," I replied, rising to my feet and looking him squarely in the eye. "And it seems I've arrived at exactly the right time." Amanda, strengthened by my presence and the truth we shared, looked Luke in the eye. "Luke, we need to talk. I know everything." His face turned pale. "What are you talking about, Amanda? You hit your head in the accident. You're confused," he stammered. "I'm not confused," she said firmly. "I know about the money laundering, the shell companies, how you used my name to hide illicit funds. And I know about your father, Robert Carroll. Mentioning his father was like a bomb going off. Luke's gaze flicked between me and Amanda, panic in his eyes. "Who told you that? Was it that meddling old woman?" he sneered, pointing contemptuously at me. "That meddling old woman is my mother," Amanda replied, growing in strength, "and she told me the truth you hid all these years. The same truth that explains why you wanted me out of the house. You were afraid she'd expose who you really are." Luke tried to step toward the bed, but I placed myself between him and Amanda. "Don't come any closer," I said with a firmness that surprised even me. "Not until we resolve this." "You have no proof," he spat, trying to maintain composure. "These are baseless accusations from a resentful old woman who wants to destroy my marriage." I reached into my pocket and produced the folder of photocopied documents, bank statements, and reports I had compiled over months. "I may not have every last detail, Luke, but I have enough to raise serious questions, and I'm sure the authorities would be very interested in investigating." His charming facade vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating demeanor. "What do you want?" he asked, voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. "We want you out of our lives," I replied without hesitation. "We want you to sign the divorce papers, relinquish any claim to Amanda's assets, and stay far away from our family." "And the baby?" he asked. "She's my child too." Amanda, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. "The baby will grow up away from you, away from your lies, your crimes, your family. She deserves a better future." "She?" Luke asked, astonished. "It's a girl," Amanda said, placing a hand on her belly, "and her name will be Irene, after her grandmother, who had the courage to protect me when I needed it most." Tears fell down my face as I heard those words. After feeling useless and rejected for so long, to discover I still had a purpose, to protect my family, was one of the most emotional moments of my life. Luke attempted to argue, threaten, manipulate, but it was too late. Amanda had made her decision, and I was there to support her. That night he signed all the necessary divorce papers and agreed to stay completely out of our lives. In the months that followed, Amanda came to the estate. Together we prepared for little Irene's arrival. My daughter found joy in the simple country life, far from the pressures of the city. She landed a remote job that allowed her to stay close to nature and family, while I continued my small-scale sweets and preserves business. When my granddaughter was born and I held that tiny being in my arms, I understood that all the pain, all the suffering, all the sacrifices had been worth it. Not only because I could protect my family, but because I had rediscovered my own strength, my own identity, my own worth. Amanda became a wonderful mother, and our bond grew stronger than I ever imagined. We were no longer just mother and daughter. We were friends, companions, women who weathered storms together, and emerged stronger on the other side. One afternoon, as we watched baby Irene sleep in the cradle on the porch, Amanda asked a question that touched me deeply. "Mom, how did you stay so strong all those years? How did you protect me even when I didn't know I needed protection?" I smiled and brushed a strand of hair from my granddaughter's forehead. "Because a mother's love knows no bounds, my daughter. It has no expiration date, no conditions, no measures. It's a power born in us that allows us to do things we never thought possible." I looked at Amanda, seeing the strong, determined woman she had become. "And now you will discover that for yourself. You will learn that motherhood is the hardest and most rewarding profession in the world. It means sacrificing yourself 1,000 times over, but also discovering a version of yourself you never knew existed." In that moment I realized my story wasn't about humiliation or rejection. It was about resilience, unconditional love, the ability to rise from one's own ashes. For years I defined my worth by others' recognition, especially my daughter's. But I learned that my value didn't depend on being needed by someone else. It depended on being enough for myself. If you've made it this far in the story, you've witnessed the strength of women who quietly fight for their families. This is just one of many inspiring accounts I share, true stories of overcoming, dignity, and transformation. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss these heart-touching tales that remind us of the power of female resilience. Every story carries a valuable lesson, and I'm sure you'll find identification and inspiration in each one. Little Irene grew up surrounded by love, nature, and inspiring stories of her family's women. She knew from childhood she bore the name of an extraordinary woman, someone who faced adversity with dignity and courage. Amanda, strengthened by lived experience, not only became an exemplary mother, but also a successful entrepreneur, expanding our sweets and preserves business to several towns in the region. As for Luke Henry, we later learned through acquaintances that tax authorities investigated him, and he faced charges for various irregularities. His life of pretenses fell apart, and he lost much of the social standing he once cherished. I felt no pleasure in his downfall, only relief knowing I made the right choice to protect my family. One night, as little Irene celebrated her first birthday, Amanda and I sat on the porch reflecting on the challenges ahead. She asked if I regretted leaving without explanation, without confrontation. "I don't regret it, my daughter," I replied, gazing at the stars shining brightly in the country sky. Sometimes we must step away to see clearly. We need silence to hear our own voice. If I hadn't come here, I might never have rediscovered who I am beyond being your mother. She smiled and squeezed my hand, and I would never have learned what strength truly means. I thought strength meant enduring in silence like you always did, but now I understand that strength also means knowing when to speak up, when to fight, when to say no. In those moments of reflection, I realized our story wasn't just about a mother and daughter. It was about the transformative power of true love, the importance of cherishing those who truly care for us, and the courage to begin anew at any age. Years later, as my granddaughter ran barefoot among the chickens on the estate, she asked why I chose to live in that simple place, far from the city. I picked her up and brought her to the garden I had nurtured with such care. "Do you see all these flowers, little Irene?" I asked, pointing to the vibrant blooms. "Each one grew because it found the right soil, water in the perfect amount, and sunshine at the right time. Sometimes we, too, must find the right place to flourish." She nodded with the seriousness of a child who still believes in magic, and in that moment I knew I had given her the most important lesson, that our happiness doesn't depend on others, but on our ability to cultivate a strong, beautiful inner garden, even in the hardest moments. Today, at 72 years old, I look back on a journey full of challenges, but also extraordinary achievements, not material gains or public accolades, but achievements of the heart, a strong, independent daughter, a healthy, beloved granddaughter, a simple yet meaningful life. I learned that dignity isn't never falling but rising each time we do, that strength isn't never crying but drying our tears and moving forward, that love isn't being necessary to someone else but choosing to love even when it's not reciprocated. And above all, I learned it's never too late to begin again, to rediscover who we are, to bloom once more. Life may surprise us with unexpected storms, but it can also bless us with glorious springs when we least expect them. My story doesn't end here. It continues every morning when I open the estate windows and breathe in the scent of the flowers I planted with my own hands. It continues with every smile of my granddaughter, every achievement of my daughter, every person who tastes my sweets and feels a bit of the love I pour into each recipe. I am Irene Smith, a woman who learned that worthiness isn't about age, circumstances, or others' recognition. It's a daily choice, a matter of self-love, of the courage to be who we truly are, regardless of what others think or say. And if one day someone says again that life would be better without me around, I will smile and carry on, because now I know my presence is no burden to anyone. It is a gift I give to those who are able to recognize its value. This is my story, a tale of humiliation turned liberation, rejection turned self-discovery, silence turned strength, a story that proves women, especially mothers, carry within them a power capable of moving mountains and changing destinies, even when the whole world seems set against them. And the most beautiful thing of all is knowing that this power does not die with age, does not diminish with hardship, and is not extinguished by ingratitude. It waits patiently for the right moment to reveal itself, to show us what we are truly capable of when we decide to fight not only for others, but also for ourselves.